If you have a broken culvert under your driveway, did you know St. Lucie County has a program to help you pay for that? Find out more next on Inside St. Lucie. Welcome to Inside St. Lucie, SLC TV's monthly government affairs show. I'm your host, Eric Gill, Communications Director for St. Lucie County. And on today's show, we're going to talk about public works projects, specifically our culvert replacement program, with our Public Works Director, Patrick Diane, and St. Lucie County Commission Chair, Kathy Townsend. But before we meet our guests, here's some upcoming events and announcements from the Board of County Commissioners. St. Lucie County offices will be closed Monday, January 16th, in observance of the Dr. Martin Luther King holiday. Now for the latest updates about all St. Lucie County Commission meetings, workshops, and events, be sure to visit our website at stlucieco.gov and click on our comprehensive calendar. If you'd like to be added to our press release distribution list, send us an email at pio@stlucieco.org. We'll be happy to include you. We also post a lot of information on social media, so we hope you follow us at St. Lucie GOV. We're going to take a quick break. Before we do, we're going to check in with the latest economic development stats with another St. Lucie Works. Tourism in St. Lucie County continues to produce strong numbers, with October kicking off the new fiscal year with an increase over 2021. The tourist development tax for October 2021 was the best on record, and this October exceeded last year by nearly 24%. Overall building activity in the unincorporated area of St. Lucie County decreased slightly in October, with 1,096 permits submitted compared to September's 1,128 permits. According to the Florida Realtors Association, the median home sale price in St. Lucie County in October was $397,450, up 13% from last year, while condo values rose by 20% with the median price at $295,000. St. Lucie County's unemployment rate stayed at 3.1% for October, the same as the previous month. Statewide, the unemployment rate rose slightly to 2.7%. The largest increases in the labor force on the Treasure Coast were in education and health services with 2,300 new jobs, followed by leisure and hospitality with 1,500 new jobs, and construction with 900 new jobs. If you work for a local business looking for skilled or trained labor, be sure to contact the staff at Career Source as they can assist your company with its recruitment and training needs. And if you're an individual looking for a job, they can help you as well. Visit the Career Source online at careersourcerc.com or call 1-866-4U2-HIRE. Welcome back to Inside St. Lucie. I'm your host, Eric Gill, and I'm joined by St. Lucie County Commission Chair Kathy Townsend.
Good
Thanks
morning.
for joining us. And Patrick Diane, our Public Works Director for St. Lucie County. Thank you both for coming on the show. And we're entering a new year, and last year we had a very successful year for Public Works. We got a lot of federal money that came down to help with a lot of backlog of water quality projects and other infrastructure projects. So Patrick, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely, thank you, Eric. So, yeah, we're very, very fortunate for the Federal American Rescue Plan, which is part of the overall bipartisan infrastructure program, which allocated a $32 million direct payment to the county. And with the board's leadership, we were able to funnel about $19 million of that towards long-needed stormwater and water quality projects. We're enhancing our stormwater master plan, which was last updated in the 90s, long overdue. We're also doing some critical projects in the White City area. We're looking at a park refit. We're doing a joint partnership project in the Indrio Savannas. So just a ton of really exciting things that are going to help those neighborhoods drain better, help cleanse the water before it gets to the lagoon and out to the St. Lucie River. So we're really excited about that.
And Commissioner, from the board standpoint, when you had that influx of money from I'm sure it's a tough decision because there's a lot of needs in the county.
There was a lot of needs, but it wasn't a tough decision. Like when we found out we had that money, rather than put it anywhere, we knew that our weakest link was our infrastructure. We knew that there was that project in Lakewood Park going on. We had the project going on in Indian River Estates, and we knew that there was an issue in White City. And so it was a very easy decision, actually. We knew that that's where the money had to go.
Yeah. And let's start back up, too, because we talk about water quality. A lot of it starts right in your own front yard, right? And residents don't understand or maybe not know that the culvert that goes under their driveway or their swale is their responsibility. And
that's true. And so I guess it was, 4 years ago?
That we did the culvert program?
Yeah.
We actually started about 2 years ago that it actually went live.
4 years ago.
We started the planning.
Yeah, so 4 years ago, I because I had a lot of the unincorporated county, there were so many residents that it was a culvert issue, and they couldn't afford the culverts. And I would say, well, why can't we fund that? And we couldn't. So
because it's private property,
right? And so finally, we looked into it, and eventually found out that we could do it. When we went up to Tallahassee, and when I believe Dan looked into some things, and so when we found out we could do it, that is then when we started the program. That we would fund it. The money would be set aside for that program. We would fund it. You would pay it back, through the tax bill. And what is it, over 10 years?
That's correct.
Yes, 10 years. And so when we started that program, we rolled it out really soft, and we didn't really promote it a whole lot. We wanted to kind of try it out a couple of times to see how it works. And I can tell you the program works. And it has allowed people that could not afford to have a culvert get a culvert, and it has also taken care of a lot of the drainage on those roads, because if you have a whole road, we go in, this happened in Lakewood Park, we went in, we did the swell work, and we did some of the ditch work, and in there were culverts that were damaged and plugged and broken. And so some of the people out there that have taken advantage of putting in their culverts through that program, the water now flows down that road. And so then other people have seen that, and then they find out about the program, and then they call in. And so I think that this is something now that really needs to be advertised, to really let the people know it, because I know that when I'm out and I talk, people are still not aware of this program. So I had Patrick a couple weeks ago, we were talking about something else in the office, and so I wanted him to come, and I want you to do videos for them, showing them how our public works division works, because people really don't understand what all they do, what they maintain, and how it works. And so Patrick, how many culverts do you think we've done in that program?
That program has about 30 enrollees, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I can tell you that a program that just started out and is really in its infancy, to have 30 people already through the program and successfully complete getting their driveway pipe replaced, and doing so without having to fork over the money all at one lump sum up front, and paying it down over 10 years at a very, very low interest rate, has been extremely fortunate, and it gives people an option. It gives people an option. It gives homeowners an opportunity to really decide what fits best for their needs. The phone is ringing off the hook now at our water quality division, and people are getting a lot more information as word of mouth spreads, and as we continue to, and thanks to the board's discretion, we are now doubling down on the amount of swale reprofiling that we're doing in neighborhoods. People are going to start to really see that they're part of the overall solution, so that it's a systems thinking thing. So we have 30 people currently through the program. We have more that are in the chain of enrollees, and we can't wait for that to take off.
And do you guys help with, so say I am not in the, but if I was in the unincorporated area of the county and my culvert failed, do you help with the contractor or make recommendations, or can they pick their contractor? How does that work?
It's a great question, and I'll tell you how it works. So let's start with who qualifies for the program.
Sure.
We tried to make it as open as available to as many people out there. So we made the requirements very, very simple. If you are in the unincorporated county, if you're not in Port St. Lucie, not in Fort Pierce, if you are current on your taxes.
I don't want to interrupt you, but let's clarify that.
Yeah.
You can be in Port St. Lucie or in Fort Pierce, but as long as you're not in the city limits.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, because
Correct.
that's very confusing to people.
Yeah, because people say my
Yeah.
address is Port
I'm
St.
in
Lucie,
Fort
but
Pierce.
I'm in
You're right.
they
Yeah,
don't
so
understand. Yeah,
you can be in the cities,
Yeah.
but there's areas of the city that are unincorporated, and that is who qualifies.
And the other caveat, I think the city of Port St. Lucie has a similar program, don't they?
I think that they started one.
Started
I
one.
think they've paused it for a little while,
Okay.
Eric. I'm not sure if they restarted it. They were using some different kinds of funds, so I'm
Yeah.
not familiar if
Sure.
that's still live. But for our program, if you're on a county-maintained road, if you're current on your taxes, and you're in a single-family home, you can qualify. And you just pick up the phone, give us a call, 772-462-1435, and the staff does the rest. You can pick your own contractor. You can go to contractor licensing and get the list of current licensed contractors that do that kind of work.
Yeah,
It's
they
really
have to be
important that
licensed,
we
yeah.
have to do that. Yeah, we don't want some unlicensed contractor out there, because we want the homeowners to have a good finished product at the end of the day. You call us up. It's a very, very straightforward process. We've shrunk it down to about 60 days to get through the entire process, which anyone who's ever gone through a mortgage or any kind of home purchase, 60 days is really quick to get us through the process. We use a mechanism called, and it's going to be a little technical, but a Municipal Services Benefit Unit. What that basically means is if somebody's getting a benefit, that person is paying a proportionate share. It's not spread across the entire county. And we've created that for things like potable water, street lights, things like that, and we're using it now for this driveway culvert assistance program. We're creating MSBUs of 1. So this is very, very powerful, and we have experts that guide you through the process, and that enabled us to really get really, really good financing rates, way better than you could do on your own at your bank or your credit union, allowing us to put that at over 10 years and also put it on your taxes. You don't have to worry about receiving a bill and then worrying about paying the bill. It goes on your taxes. It's automatically rolled into your overall home taxes that you're going to pay for the year. So it's very convenient for the homeowner and allows us to, as the commissioner said, to really repair the entirety of the street run when we come in there and we do the swale reprofiling. So
And then
really excited about it.
If I were to move within that 10 years, whoever buy that house would pick up that.
That's correct.
That,
It's-
or it can
yes.
also be if negotiated in the sale. So if I
Okay. Want to pay it
if
off?
I say to
okay.
you, I'm going to pay off, I have an MSB on my property, I'm going to pay it off, or you could negotiate that in the sale too. It does carry over, it stays with the house
Sure,
and the
that's
tax
right.
ID,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you can negotiate that in the sale, that it can be
time.
paid at closing, or it can be carried over in your taxes.
And let's talk about water, because one of the things, it's tough to educate or explain to people how water works. A lot of people, well, just put up a pump and move that water. Well, you could do that, but then you're probably going to flood somebody else downstream, or you know.
Patrick sees that all the time, because people
yes.
don't understand the flow of water.
Yeah.
They really don't,
Yeah.
and his office gets bombarded.
And that's why you guys have engineers to do this stuff.
Correct. We have engineers, inspectors, we have crews that go out there and maintain. And you know, our system is pretty unique. For people that have moved here from a downtown setting, they're used to the curb and the gutter and all this concrete, and everything's underground. As soon as it rains, it leaves and you don't see it. With our system, we have these grass roadside swales. These are depression areas adjacent to the road, and they capture the water. And the grass swales are really important because within those grass systems live billions and billions of microbes, and they break down things like greases and fertilizers and oils, and they really, really help to cleanse the water. The swales are actually what we call the best management practice, but they cleanse the water before it gets to the lagoon or the estuary or the savannas. So it's all part of the overall systems thinking on how we do this. Now, along those swales, we're going to have those pipes where homeowners have driveways that access their house, and that's where this culvert assistance program really helps to benefit in removing those old pipes that may have been rusted through or crushed or just in poor shape. So it allows that to get fixed so that the whole system can work as it's supposed to and really help that water drain out after a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of the future projects and working with like parks even. I know that's been a big push for municipalities is to take stormwater treatment areas and turn them into recreational amenities. And I think a great example of that is Indian Hills. You heard about that just last night with the 4-H kids. Yeah. They've done some oyster reef mitigations right off of Indian Hills. But you know, the disc golf club worked with the city of Fort Pierce to put a course in at Indian Hills. So there's some, you know, there's some infrastructure improvements there that stores that water and cleanses it, but there's also recreational opportunities there now. Is that what the board or what staff is pushing more for?
Absolutely. I think looking at those types of projects that have dual benefits are things that make the most sense. You know, we're mixing the green infrastructure with the gray infrastructure and really looking at dual benefits. We're looking at one down off of Oleander, Ancient Oaks Preserve. Yep. This is an existing park where we're looking at retrofitting a portion of that park to be a stormwater detention area. So when it rains, it'll store that water, cleanse it before it goes down what we call Merritt Ditch and out into the river, but also be used as a passive recreation field for things like soccer or those other areas when it's not raining. So it's a dual purpose and you're getting the maximum benefit. So that model really works well.
And it's great for the wildlife too. The amount of wildlife I've seen at Indian Hills with the birds and the gopher tortoises and you know, it's pretty impressive. And the gators too.
Absolutely, yeah.
We got to make habitat for them too, right?
We do. I think we're
they
losing,
were here first.
We're losing more and more of it. So wherever we can find those opportunities to restore native habitat or create man-made wetlands, we just did that at Melville Road. We have a new stormwater pond that's off of just south of Midway Road and just west of US 1. It's a 14-acre tract that was uplands and really just overgrown and full of non-native vegetation that was next to a neighborhood that had no drainage. When it rained, there were literally ducks in the street. And so what we and the county's leadership elected to do was to purchase that tract of land, design a stormwater pond that's very unique. It's a unique shape. It's not one of these square ponds that you see next to the roadway. We planted it with native vegetation that creates habitat for birds and amphibians and other wildlife to use it. And we're also looking at future phases of creating a little neighborhood amenity with a kiosk and a picnic table and things like that. So it really can become a place
nice there.
that the residents can enjoy, spend some time, walk their dog, and just be with nature.
Yeah, and I think even like they have those new vegetative mats, like at the Indian Hills, and I don't know, maybe Platts Creek does that too, right? Or they use that alum
We
treatment.
have well, we don't, but there's also some out there by but the Humane Society in that pond.
Yeah, so that's Indian Hills, and
Yeah.
they have those floating
Yes.
mats with
Yeah.
the vegetation that
Yes.
helps suck the nutrients out.
That's right.
And then those plants can be then replanted. So it's that whole circular system. Like you said, instead of just, I think what I always hear Howard Tipton, our county administrator, soon to be former county administrator, always like to say, it's Florida on the cheap,
That's
right? We
right.
just drained it and streamlined it to build. Now we're trying to repair the sins of the past from the 40s and 50s to make this inhabitable, to correct some of the mistakes so that water is treated before it's discharged. So
Yeah, people don't understand water. I can tell you, like years ago, when I first came here, I was like a lot of the residents. I mean, I understood some water, but being here the 7 years that I've been here, I've learned a lot, especially from Patrick. He has stood his ground as he should have and said, no, you can't do that because, and I've actually gotten educated through that because it does make sense. But if you don't understand a lot of it, because I'm not an engineer,
Sure.
And then when he breaks it down and explains it, then it makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that most residents don't have that opportunity to sit there and meet with him one-on-one for him to explain it, but that's part of the reason why I want you to do this educational part with him too, because they are great at explaining it, and how it works and how the system works. And so if we can help educate the community, because like in Lakewood Park, how many people did we go out there and do the swales? And when we got done, people were saying they were too deep, and they were going out there and putting dirt in them and filling them in because they were too deep.
Right.
And then it was backing up the water downhill because people just know what they had that worked and they didn't have water, and then we go do something and then it's like, the county came and did this and now my yard is flooding. Well, it is maybe right now, but let them get done, because when they get done, it's gonna work, but you have to let them finish the project.
Yeah, and like I think Lakewood Park's a good example too, because I know we didn't have permission. People don't understand. We don't control all the stormwater systems in the entire county. So there's independent water management districts like Fort Pierce Farm, South Florida Water Management. We have to get approval if we were to increase the amount of capacity, correct, Patrick? And
That's correct.
Yes.
Right.
not legislative, congressional legislative,
yeah.
but it may as well be
Yeah,
sometimes.
and anytime that you're changing, manipulating any kind of flows, whether you're increasing, rerouting, you're required to get a permit. And part of the reason is the commissioner was explaining, the sins of the past, right? In the 40s and 50s, the way that this area developed, and really all of South Florida developed, was you take all the water and you mainline it straight to the river or to the ocean, and that's what you do. Well, we're finding out that was really good for drainage and development, really not so good from an ecology standpoint. So now we're trying to back the train up and retrofit all these areas to try to integrate all the people that are moving here and continue to move here while still maintaining a good level of service.
Yeah,
So
well,
that's really what we're after.
Even too, back in the day, it was a lot of farmers and groves.
Yeah.
And so it was canals that they would dike up and do these things. And you just can't do that anymore because there's growth in residential places around you, and you can't hold the water, or you can't dump the water onto that development. And so little by little, they're finding where a lot of these man-made dikes were, especially out, west of town. And that causes some confusion too, because you'll have an area where it's residential and sometimes they flood and sometimes they don't, but it depends on the people beyond them if they're opening up their man-made dikes and letting the water flow or holding the water.
Yeah.
And so they're getting it. I think just the 7 years I've been here, I've seen a difference. I've even seen a difference out off like Glades, where it dumps into the canal back there. So they're figuring it out. We're a growing community, and I know that some people like that and some people don't, but at the end of the day, you just have to sit back and let them do their job. They know what they're doing. I'm not saying that they don't get it wrong, because they do. There has been a couple of times that I've actually had to go out there and say, I think this is a little bit too low or whatever. They've rectified it. Nobody's perfect, and it's okay. We'll address those issues if it happens. But for the most part, they do get it right and they do a good job. You just have to let them finish the project.
Yeah. Speaking of development, I know Patrick's not with Planning and Development Services, but I see a lot lately this kind of anti-development sentiment of we need to stop doing zero lot lines, and But unfortunately, Florida has or fortunately, depending on which side of the equation you're on, Florida has very strong property rights. So
They do.
if I have this land and it's ag, I have a right to come to you guys and say, I want to rezone this or change,
Well,
and build development.
But the rezoning it's property rights, but it's not property rights. So if you have a piece that is Ag 5 and you have 300 acres, we do not have to allow that. We can keep it at Ag 5, and that's based on, at least I'm speaking for
Sure.
myself, because it's up to the other four
Yeah.
to decide, but it's determined by what's around you. So if you are around ranchettes and people that have 20 and 30 acres, and you're way, way west, and you want to come in there and do a development, it's probably not going to get the approval.
Sure.
But if you're contiguous and you're butting up to something that's already high density, it's residential, and you're wanting to rezone that to do that, then it's okay. That's why you rezone, right? Just like right now, currently, we had to increase our urban service boundary. You have to do that every 10 years when the census comes out. It's statute. It's mandated by Florida statute that when the census comes out, you have to redistrict. And from redistricting, you have to change your urban service boundary. You have to increase density. And so we had to move the urban service boundary because by law, we have to increase our density. So you'll see now a lot of the properties that are within that area, mainly Glades, Carlton Road, because we took it to Header Canal. So you're seeing that whole region in there from Okeechobee Road out to Header Canal where that's been ag for so long. And that's what it was.
Yeah.
And so now you have your developments coming through, starting from the east, pushing to the west, Port St. Lucie, which they have a Port St. Lucie address.
Yeah.
And so it's only a matter of time before they're annexed into the city of Port St. Lucie. And so that was the area that we chose to continue to move the urban service boundary because it only made sense. That was
Sure.
Port St. Lucie. And so because of that now, there are several projects coming forward and property of homeowners and developers that have bought the property that they want to change the density, they want to do smaller lot lines and stuff. And so that is very strong with property rights. And you have to be cautious because if you deny projects, you open us up for lawsuits.
Yeah. I mean, I go back to the rehab place on the
Yes.
island. That's, it's not something, and there was a comment I saw recently, somebody said the board is forcing people to do this. The county doesn't force people to develop their lands. They choose to, come and ask for that.
We don't sit back and ask anybody to develop
Yeah.
their lands. All we do is we sit there and we try to make sure that we are not taking away the quality of life of the people surrounding you. And I know that it's hard. And, like, for example, the rehab place on South Beach that you're referencing, you have a unique situation on the beach, south and north. It's a unique situation over there. And when you talk about a 300 or 400 room rehab facility going in, it's fear. Okay. And what they didn't understand was that this wasn't a sober home or a court-ordered program. This was a private rehab place going in that people were going to fly in from California and wherever to go there privately, and it was there because they chose to be there to come and get help. And it was also designed and laid out in a way that if the project never went through, it was going to be a resort and a hotel, and it wasn't going to be an eyesore for them stuck over there on the island.
Yeah.
Now, I don't really know where that project is
Yeah, I was
today
gonna say, that was
because
3 years ago,
they never came forward and finished their application. And that happens a lot of times too. People come in and they get their approval, but then they never move forward and they never build the project and do anything. And so I know that it's fear. I have an example of that out west of my the street that I have out there. I live off of Trowbridge Road, and it's a quiet little country place, and we all love it out there. And there is somebody that owns a large chunk of land on the south side of Trowbridge Road, and he wants to develop it. It's going to put 1,000 to 2,000 cars a day on that road. Well, is he going to build? Who knows? Because with that comes road improvements and the roads off of Trowbridge, that have to be improved. So before you get upset about something because there's talk about them coming out there to develop that, wait and see if it happens, because there's so many other moving parts that people don't understand whenever a project's coming forward before the board, that there's so many other things of criteria that have to be met that sometimes the projects never happen.
Yeah. And a lot of those projects create additional funding for you guys. They
Correct.
impact fees to help widen those roads. So
Commissioner hit on an extremely important point. that even after a rezone goes through or a site plan is approved, there's a whole nother set of really requirements that has to be made. For example, some of the biggest challenges from a monetary side on the developer side are that you have to provide paved roads. Well, you may not have a paved road into your subdivision or the tract of land you're looking to develop. So that's an upfront cost that the developer has to make. And so they have to go back and run the business model side of things and see if it makes sense and do dollars and cents add up to something that's profitable. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But that's something that always has to be provided. If there's not utilities going out to that site, they have to run utilities out to that site. That's on their cost.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you're along the way of that new utility, you get the benefit of the opportunity to pick up municipal water or sewer service where you may not have had it before, and there's very unlikely a chance that you could have afforded to extend that line. So there is a benefit as growth happens. I think we can't stop it. There's the property rights issues that you all hit on.
Sure.
We can regulate it and control it and make sure that it's compatible, which I think is what you were hitting on.
Yeah, and like you said, what's best for the whole county, and unless we're going to stop population control, we can't, which I don't think we can, and nor do we want to. But you can't stop people from moving or wanting to develop.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting that whenever I'm out there, I hear people say, "Kathy, you have to stop the growth." I'm like, "But I can't stop the growth. Babies are being born every day."
Yeah.
And you know what? A lot of y'all and your children are having babies, and you're having grandbabies.
Yeah.
So they need a place to live. But
They're not living in my house forever. My kids need to go out.
and the thing is, being a long-term resident here myself, it was great back then, and those days were wonderful, but that's not reality. The reality is this is life, and we're constantly going to grow, and we have to embrace change. And so you have to do it with caution, and you want to make sure that you're getting it right, and you do want to make sure that you are protecting the residents that are going to be affected. And I do take that very serious when I do that. And I know that, Patrick and with the right-of-ways and the water and the roads and stuff, they get that right.
And not to cut you off, there is internal communication. Whenever there's these projects come forward, they're not just going to the planning department. Patrick's staff is there.
That's right.
Utilities
are there.
Yes.
We bring in other municipalities sometimes to talk through these issues so that there is proper planning.
Yeah, well, what they do is they come in, and their first meeting is with planning and zoning, and they sit there with the planner of the day, and they talk about what they want to do, and staff says, you can do this and this, but you might want to do this. Then they usually go and they meet with engineering, and then they meet with Patrick, and they go through the water and the roads and the right-of-way, and if sidewalks are going to be required, and if that's going to trigger a turning lane.
Right.
And sometimes there has to be traffic studies done, and sometimes it's required to have a stoplight if it's going to come out to a certain road. And so it's a long time before you can just walk in the door and make your actual application. A lot of times you have to come in, you have to have text amendment changes. And then if you're going to do a conditional use to it. So it's about 2 years from the time you begin to even start to think about a project before you ever really get to where you need to be to actually start pulling permits. And that's if everything goes smoothly.
Sure.
A lot of times, Patrick, I'm sure, sees this all the time. People will come in and they'll inquire about stuff, and they'll go 90% of it, and all of a sudden they just stop and walk away because they realize when they get to that point it's not cost effective.
Yeah. Well, moving forward, Patrick, what are some other projects that Public Works is going on besides the culvert replacement plan?
We've got some really exciting projects. I mentioned the American Rescue Plan stormwater side. I mentioned the doubling of the amount of swale maintenance that we're doing now. We're also looking at rehabbing some culverts that are under Walton Road to help the flow under that roadway at the Savannah's crossing equalize a little bit better. We are also taking on a whole host of roadway widening projects in concert with the DOT. We got some really, really amazing news. Last week we were able to accelerate Midway Road widening from 2-lane to 4-lane between Jenkins and Selvitz. We were able to accelerate that 2 years thanks to the board's leadership. We are advanced funding that, and we will get repaid by the state and federal dollars that were programmed in FY26 in the future. So that's when that will come back. We're also looking at a study for Glades Cutoff Road. We know that's a highly used road that's on the brink of a lot of growth. So we're undertaking a project development and environmental. It's a 2-year-long study which sets us up for federal funding. It's a required study that has to be done. We look at everything from cultural to environmental to socioeconomic to other types of elements to make sure that we're looking at the best scenario for the best timeline. We're looking at Jenkins Road. We're going to be undertaking the same study with the Department of Transportation starting next year. We know that that's another roadway that is critical to our needs. We're widening Selvitz Road from Glades Cutoff Road to Edwards Road. We're going to 4-lane that, including a new bridge over the 10 Mile Creek. So we're doing a whole host of road widening programs. We also have our sales tax, our infrastructure sales tax, which continues to pay for the road resurfacing that is desperately needed. We're going to be doing Header Canal Road this year, and we're looking at Rangeline Road next year, and then Carlton Road the following year. We're in the 4th year of a 10-year plan. This is a half-penny sales tax, which has allowed about $10 million of county infrastructure, and it's really using on backlog of necessary projects that we just didn't have the capital to work forward and complete. So really excited about that. We're looking at some bridge repairs that are coming up to help those hurricane damaged bridges, and also continuing to partner with DOT on things like the North Bridge, that North Causeway Bridge replacement.
I'm glad you mentioned that too, because much like the municipal boundaries, people get confused about roadways, right? Midway roads maintained by us and FDOT, and certain projects are us, certain projects then. Sometimes it's a joint project, and we get a lot of that. Why is it taking you guys so long? Well, it's not really us, not to point fingers, but
Right.
it's,
But Inderry Road's the same way, and so is Kings Highway.
yeah. Kings is a great example. The work
yeah.
right now is
Kings,
FDOT,
We have
right?
a small
Problem.
portion of it. DOT has a small portion of it.
Yeah, 25th Street, right?
Orange
St. James,
Avenue.
Port St.
Orange
Lucie,
Avenue, yeah.
us, it's
Sure.
multiple people, so.
It can be very, very confusing. One of the things that we're working on is a portal, a GIS map-based format that will indicate either through color coding or different kinds of lines who owns which road. That'll be really, really helpful for the resident to understand, and maybe for the developers as well, I imagine. Do I live on a county road? Who do I call if I see a pothole in front of my road? We have a lot of overlap of the city of Port St. Lucie and Fort Pierce with our roadways, so something like that might just help to clear up some of the residents.
Let's do culverts and canals too. After
Sure.
we get the roads, because that's another one we get.
That's true.
This culvert or the canal behind my house, it's overgrown. Well, sometimes it takes me,
The
a couple
swells,
days
too.
to
Correct.
figure out who
Correct.
owns
Correct.
it.
And people are confused about the swells. They don't know if they own it or we own it or Florida Power and Light owns it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another whole conversation, because the utility easements of what they have, and so many times they think it's us,
Yeah.
and we're not cleaning it, and it's not us, it's Florida Power and Light. That happens a lot. So there's so many moving parts to this.
There are.
Yep.
And it's a big picture scenario, and it takes that partnership between the county and the resident. We maintain the swales. If it's on a county road, we're responsible for the swales. There were some concerns about safety considerations once, as you mentioned, Commissioner, when you dug the swale out, now it's deeper, and people were worried about, am I going to get sued as a homeowner if somebody trips and falls in that? You're not. It's county property. Your homeowner's insurance covers the private property, so you're not responsible for the swale. It's an important point that people were a little bit nervous about. It was a good question, because I hadn't thought about it, but it's a concern. So looking at those kinds of things on how we can make sure that residents' concerns are appeased before we go in and do the swale maintenance is an important part of it.
Well, Commissioner, is there anything else you want to mention before we wrap up the show?
I just want to say thank you to all the residents that do pay attention and do call the office and do call the other departments when they see things, because we can't have our eyes and ears everywhere. And I want to wish everybody a Happy New Year.
Right.
Thanks for being here, Patrick.
Thank you.
Patrick, anything else you want to mention to folks? If they have questions, there's a lot of information on the website, right?
There is, yes. If you have questions about the Culvert Assistance Program and whether or not you qualify and what are the constraints, we have a whole host of information. We have some FAQs. If you go onto our website, that's stlucieco.gov, and there's a little search bar up there, type in Culvert, C-U-L-V-E-R-T. It'll take you right to the link for the Culvert Assistance Program. We have a fact sheet. It'll tell you all about it, or you can call 772-462-1435. That's our Water Quality Division, and we have people there that can answer all your questions. Thank you.
And I'm sure you'll have the number up there.
Yeah,
for you,
yeah.
too. Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, thank you both for taking the time today.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank
Don't
you.
go anywhere. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll wrap up the show.
St. Lucie County's road and bridge crews will be paving South Header Canal Road now through February. This project was one of the 27 roadways identified as a priority paving project through the half-cent sales tax revenue. The road base will be reconstructed utilizing full-depth reclamation of the existing road and then repaving along the entire 5 miles of the road between Orange Avenue and Okeechobee Road/State Road 70. This is a $3.4 million project with Asphalt Paving Systems serving as the lead contractor. Funding for this project comes from the voter-approved 2018 half-cent sales tax. Engineering and Road and Bridge are starting to jack and bore Edwards Road to install a 42-inch casing beneath the FEC railroad. Crews began working on Edwards Road in August of last year and expect the entire $7.4 million project to be completed in August of this year. Crews will be removing and replacing the drainage underneath Edwards Road from Oleander Avenue to US 1. Funding for this project comes from the half-cent sales tax and the Federal Highway Administration. Ranger Construction is serving as the lead contractor on the project. Lanes have been closed on Edwards Road since Hurricane Irma in 2017. The extensive closure was due to the amount of damage underneath the roadway, as well as the various permits and agencies involved. Once completed, all lanes on Edwards Road will be reopened. The Water Quality Division is finishing up the replumbing of Melville Road, tying the stormwater drainage into the new stormwater treatment area. Work is expected to be completed within the next 60 days. In-house crews are finalizing the plumbing work, which will redirect stormwater into the pond, which was funded through a $1 million grant from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. The half-cent sales tax is paying for the other $900,000 worth of work, which will cover the stormwater plumbing and repaving of the roads and driveways, which will begin this spring. Additionally, the Water Quality Division will continue swale maintenance in the Indian River Estates neighborhood. This $1 million project is being completed by ELD contractors with funding coming from a Municipal Services Taxing District unit. For the latest updates about all road construction work completed by St. Lucie County's Public Works, visit our website at stlucieco.gov/engineering.
We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Inside St. Lucie. We hope you'll tune in again next month. If you have topics or subjects you'd like to see covered on the program relating to St. Lucie County government, give us a call at 772-462-1791 or send us an email at pio@stlucieco.org. And if you'd like to see previous aired episodes of this or other SLC TV programs, visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/stluciegov. I'm your host, Eric Gill. For myself and the staff, thanks for watching.